Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, first female mayor of Grand Rapids, may I add. You beautiful human being. Thank you for pulling up a seat at our kitchen table.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad to be here. It was a delight to meet you when you were in Grand Rapids, and your email to me just like warmed my heart. And so I'm really glad we could make this work.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's exactly how I wanted to kickstart, was sharing with our listeners how we came into each other's lives because Mayor Bliss, I'm a huge believer that the rooms you stand in matter.
Yes.
The rooms you stand in matter. And we met at this beautiful women in hospitality event in Grand Rapids. And I remember sitting there and hearing you on that stage and thinking to myself, she needs to come on the podcast. And I love this woman. So when I talk about, or when you hear the words being intentional in the rooms you stand in, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it means a couple different things.
Yeah.
One, I feel like so often uh, women aren't encouraged to walk into a room with confidence,
Mm,
be their authentic self.
mm,
And so I think part of it is, really feeling comfortable with who you are and not feeling like you need to have a mask on when you walk in a room. And then the other thing I find is that every room we walk into, we have this opportunity to make a connection or to have an impact or to support somebody else.
mm.
So I really believe that every space we go into, there's this incredible opportunity to have an impact on other people's lives, and we should take that responsibility really seriously.
Mm. My friend, we are 2 minutes into this and you're taking me to church already. I I was like, "Oh, preach to me." You had me at really this lack of confidence and this lack of knowing who you are. I just turned 40 and I felt that there is such freedom in that. And finally, at this age, giving myself space to hear myself and know myself and trust myself and the gifts that come from that. My friend, what would your advice be to the woman listening that thinks to themselves, I don't even know who I am? How do I get more confidence? Anything that you've done in your journey to fuel your own confidence and to get to know yourself?
Oh, that's a great question because I think we're all on these different journeys,
Mm,
and I think some of us we are privileged enough to grow up in families that helped us develop that sense of confidence, and then I think others we really struggled our whole life.
mm,
Uh, so I think there's different paths because all of our experiences and journeys are just so different. But
yeah.
at least for me and for women, I think the common theme that I've heard is that, and we could dissect this all day long, right? About how
Yeah.
women are socialized differently and all of the expectations put on us and always feeling scrutinized. And many of us living and working and trying to navigate a largely male dominated field or world, it can be
Mm,
incredibly intimidating. Uh, so for me, I think it's one, we have to spend enough time with ourselves to in that space of self-awareness and
mm,
self-reflection and really try to hone in on, what are our values, what are my values, what do I bring to the table, what is special about me,
mm.
and and also just embracing that and being proud of who we are and not feeling like we need to apologize. I think that's one thing. And then I also think um, I think we are sometimes our worst enemies, and recognizing that when we walk into a room, not all eyes are on us. Most
Mm.
people, they're not scrutinizing us the way that we think that they are. And so I think some of it is just getting out of our own way and out of our own head. And and every time that we're critical of ourselves, try to stop ourselves, and just like we say we need to build up other women, we need to build up ourselves as well. And so I think, how do you learn how to just give yourself really positive self-talk that will
Mm.
help you build your confidence when you walk in that room? And then for me, I've always said, when I have kind of felt that moment of anxiety or
Yeah.
like I'm not sure if I should speak up. I always remind myself, I have just as much I deserve to be here just as much as everybody else.
Mm.
I think sometimes we don't feel deserving, and we have to remind ourselves that we are just as deserving as every single other person in that room and around that table.
Mm. Oh my God, you about brought me to tears. That is such a beautiful, beautiful gift to give yourself. And I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about you this morning. Here's to the moments of silence. I love these little micro moments of grabbing coffee with no phone or walking the dog with no phone. Like what comes to you? I think there's something so beautiful. So I was thinking of you, my sister, this morning in my house coat with my cup of coffee this morning. And I was thinking to myself, in this very public role that you lead as mayor of Grand Rapids and being very visible and out into the community, and that welcomes everyone's opinion.
Yes, it
How
does.
how do you what tools or what sort of self-talk or spaces have you had to create for yourself so you don't get crippled by just everyone's opinion of what you should do, be, say, because it can feel very crippling.
Oh yeah, and in fact, that reminds me when I was first elected, I was elected in '05. I was 30 years old,
Mm,
and I was the only female on the city commission. So I was serving with five other men, and I was also the youngest. So I think the next youngest commissioner mayor was about 25 years older than me. So it was a really interesting experience and season of my life, and I received a lot of feedback, as I call it,
uh,
about everything, right? About what I was wearing and the colors I wore and if I
mm,
should wear glasses or not. And did I speak up too much or not enough or ask enough questions? And it was, I felt like every day I was being bombarded. People who
yeah.
told me I wore too much makeup, I didn't wear enough makeup, like you name it, I heard it. And unfortunately, a lot of it was about how I looked, which really irritated me. So anyway, you're right. Nowadays, I don't hear so much about that, but everybody has an opinion about an issue or a complaint about something in the city or something they love about the city. And so I do, when I'm out and about, I hear from a lot of people all the time. Um, and so a couple things. One, there are things that I remind myself that I love.
Mm,
One, I love that people feel comfortable coming up to me and talking to me. I don't think that's true uh, about every elected official or politician.
mm,
Like some people don't, they feel intimidated. I'm really glad that people feel comfortable talking to me and having what I feel like often is a very authentic conversation. I love that people love our community enough to share their opinion, even if I don't agree with it. And I encourage people to do that. I also fundamentally believe that we don't have to agree for me to respect your opinion. And
mm.
so, whether it's out in the community or at my city commission meetings, when sometimes I have people screaming at me, I remind myself that the reason people are showing up and they're talking is because they care and they love this community, which I want them to continue to do. And it's okay to be passionate about it. I don't want them to be rude and disrespectful, which
Yeah.
sometimes they are. But I really appreciate people's passion. And then I just fundamentally believe that we don't have to agree. And I'll listen to people and I'll say, I really appreciate your perspective. I don't agree with it, and that's okay. And so typically I try to see the positive in every interaction, even if it's a interaction that is less than positive.
As you were talking, I just wrote this down because I love your mindset. I heard this, I think it's a Tony Robbins quote. God bless that man. He got me out of the darkest of gutters at moments when I needed it. And he has said, what's wrong is always available, as is what's right. And
Mhm.
do you have you always had this sort of optimism in life as you look back on your journey, or is it something that you've really had to work on and be intentional on?
Yeah, I, what I would say, I think I tend to have a positive outlook, but I really had to work on it, especially
Mm,
when I was younger. And I had a couple incredible people in my life that helped me when I was younger. Recognize that all of us have a choice in how we see the challenges that come before us.
Mm.
So I'll tell you a story, and I can't remember if I talked about this in my speech or not, but so when I was growing up, when I was little, I was diagnosed with this really rare bone disease, and they caught it when I was about 8 months old. And I was in braces on both my legs. I couldn't walk. And then when I was about 3, they started doing surgeries on my legs to try to straighten them and strengthen them. So, they would do surgeries on both legs, and they'd break my bones and put in pins. And then they went to metal plates, and then metal rods. And then one of my metal rods broke, and they had to put a larger metal rod in my leg. And they had to take bone out of my hips and my back and put it in my leg. So it was like I was in and out of the hospital a lot. Most of my childhood up, and my last surgery was when I was 26. So about 22 years ago, knock on wood. So, but I was in the hospital a lot. And while I was in the hospital, I felt sorry for myself a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm from a big family. All my siblings would be out and about having fun, and I'd be stuck inside. At school, I wouldn't be able to go out on recess. So there were some times in my life when I was a kid where I felt pretty sorry for myself, and I really struggled. So there's this one guy that I fell in love with. He became like a second dad to me
Mm.
at the hospital. I went to U of M Mott Children's Hospital, and that's where my surgeries were. And his name was Eddie Phillips. And he was in the cast room, and he would take my casts on and off. But I got to know him really well, and he spent a lot of time with me when I was in the hospital. And I was probably, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 years old.
Mm.
And I was totally feeling sorry for myself. And he said to me, like, he called me Raz. So when I was a kid, people would call me Raz, or my siblings call me Razzie. And he said, Raz, you have a choice. And you get to sit around and feel sorry for yourself and be angry at the world. Uh, or you can look around and recognize that you have a lot to be grateful for.
Mm.
And back then, I'd be in a hospital room with lots of other kids, usually, anywhere from 3 to 4 other kids. And, some of the kids in the rooms were really significantly sicker than I was.
Yeah.
And, I remember him reminding me that there were all of these aspects to my life that I should be embracing and be grateful for. And he said, like, you get to decide if you feel grateful for what you do have, or if you're always going to be complaining about what you don't have. And he was this incredibly positive person. And he was always pointing out to me the silver lining,
Mm.
right? Like he would also say to me too, tell me what you're learning from this experience. So he'd challenge me. And then he would say to me, like, you have a strength in you that other people don't have. So
Mm.
he saw things in me, even when I was a little kid, that I didn't necessarily see or feel at the time, but he helped me on that journey, like get through hard times. Um, and then I had a couple teachers who were really powerful and had a big impact on my life. And one of them in particular, one time, again, feeling sorry for myself. We all get in
Mhm.
those moments, right?
Mhm.
And I remember her saying to me, you can't go outside today. And yes, you're in a wheelchair, but it's a season that will pass. Like, you're going to get through this. You're going to walk. And I really believe if there's a will, there's a way. And since the day I met you, you have a really strong will. So I remember my teacher telling me that. And then the beautiful thing about her, and this is why I believe, like, little things that we do can have a big impact on people's lives. So my teacher, remember back then there was like the green chalkboards and
Yes.
big block letters, right? She wrote above the chalkboard in the block letters, if there's a will, there's a way. And she left it up there the entire rest of the school year.
Mm.
And that mantra got just seared into my brain. Like, I still say it to this day. I write it down. Even in college, on rough days, I would write, okay, if there's a will, there's a way. I got to figure this out. So I think those two individuals and those experiences when I was young really helped me see that I had more power than I realized.
Mhm.
And so much of it was based on my own frame of mind, really, my own decision on how I was going to respond to something.
That makes
Yeah.
me think as you're talking, just at this whole moment about, and I posted something about this the other day on LinkedIn about how it's not about you. You know, our digital world can make you feel like it is about you, you know, when you want to post the thing and you're like, nah, but no one's going to like that. Or the likes or the shares or the things. To your point earlier, Roz, about how when you walk in a room and you feel like everyone's looking at you, it's not about you. It's about putting your words out in a way that feels right to you because the people that need it will find it.
Mhm.
What does that mean to you, you know, about, you know, playing bigger, putting your words out, not stifling yourself or holding yourself back? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I I think that's such a good question. I haven't thought about that question before. Um, for me, I was I had moments, especially early in my career
Mm,
and early when I was elected. So I would say like my first term in office, where I was very concerned about saying the wrong thing, sounding stupid,
mm,
asking the wrong question. Um, I was guarded. So when I was first elected, I rarely talked about my personal life. Uh, in fact, when my very first campaign, I didn't want to really share anything about my struggles growing up as a kid because I didn't want people feeling sorry for me.
mm,
I didn't want people to think that I was using it to try to get their sympathy. Uh, it was a really interesting space that I was in, and I think a lot of it was related to my own insecurity and feeling like I needed to prove myself. And what I found is that the more the more comfortable I got, and I think my comfort level and confidence increased dramatically as I felt I became an expert in the space. So the
mm.
more I knew, the more I learned, I started to feel more confident. So I took a deep dive in everything and tried to learn as quickly as I could so that I felt more comfortable speaking up. And what I found is that as I spoke up more, uh, I got a lot more feedback from people.
Mm.
Like people were like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked that question. I was thinking the same thing." Or "I'm so glad that you posed that question." Or "I'm so glad that you," like I started to get feedback from people and I started to realize I was, again, I was creating my own anxiety and fear, not other people. And I think once we start to realize that, we can let go of some of that and just be more present and be
Mm.
less concerned about what other people think and more present in the moment to bring forward our own voice, the questions that sometimes need to be asked that nobody else is going to ask,
Mm.
the points that need to be brought up, or the experience that other people will resonate with other people. Um, so I found like as I was able to just start to let go that concern about what everybody else thinks, I was able to feel much more confident speaking up.
Oh my God, you took me to church with those words. I felt such a connection to that. You know, Roz, I was in this hospitality career for 15 years. I was damn good at it. But here's the thing. I worked with people side by side for over 10 years, a decade, and I never knew who they were as humans, because
Mm,
I was so busy in the task list, in my own insecurities, because I constantly felt that I had something to prove, not to other people, but to me, in this self-induced anxiety. And I
yeah.
think I really struggled a lot with. I felt that there were two versions of me. This version that I would allow people to see at work, and this personal version, and I didn't know how to marry them. And as you're talking, it just makes me flash to this gift of vulnerability. And
Mm.
we love to put a hashtag around it like it's easy, but it's hard. Right? We're
It's
like,
so
vulnerability
hard.
is strength.
It's so
And you're like,
hard.
it is, but it's hard. Well,
It's hard.
as someone who has done this army crawl of navigating, bringing you into this very public position and the metamorphosis of those around you as you had the courage to do that, what would your advice be to the woman listening that is struggling like you've been, like I've been, that feels that there needs to be these two versions of her?
Yeah. I would probably say two things. One, be really like I've become really comfortable saying to people, uh, especially when they're being critical, I will consistently say, I promise you, I am doing the best that I can with the resources I have in
Mm,
this season that I'm in, and nobody is perfect. So I think just being really comfortable challenging people, if they are, in my opinion, if they have unrealistic expectations, or if they're not just respecting like who you are and how you show up. Nobody, all of us have bad days. All of us struggle with things. And I think we just have to be really comfortable saying, like, look, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I promise you, I will always do the best that I can on the day that I show up.
mm,
Um, and then the other thing I think we need to get comfortable with is just saying, look, this is who I am. I am not you. I am I am not the former mayor. So I've had people say to me, well, Mayor Hart, and I love Mayor Hartwell, by the way. He's my predecessor. I love him. He's a huge mentor of mine. But he's had a very different lived experience, and his leadership style is very different than mine. And people say, well, Mayor Hartwell would have. And I'm like, I'm not Mayor Hartwell, and I don't want to be Mayor Hartwell. I want to be Mayor Bliss, and I want to be the best Mayor Bliss that I possibly can be. And this is who I am. So I've had people say to me, there have been a number of experiences I've had as mayor that break my heart,
mm,
that absolutely break my heart.
mm,
And there are times that when I'm giving a speech or I'm talking or I'm at a press conference, I will choke up or tear up.
mm,
And I remember the first time that happened to me, I had people reach out to me and tell me that tearing up or crying made me look weak.
mm,
And that I always have to be, firm, and I'm the mayor. And I have just, and my response was then, and it still is today, look, this is who I am.
mm,
And I am not going to pretend that there aren't aspects of this work or things that happen in this community that don't break my heart. They
mm,
do. And that doesn't mean I can't still navigate and lead through them. Uh, and it doesn't diminish my ability to lead, but I'm not gonna pretend to not care about something. That's
mm,
just not who I am, right? And so I think we also have to be more comfortable just saying, like, this is who I am, and you might not always appreciate it, but I'm not gonna be a good mayor or leader or author or whatever our title is, right? If we constantly feel we have to put on a show for other
mm,
people.
mm. God, that's put, you know what? That needs to be on a bumper sticker, a t-shirt, a hat. Girl, yes. And what I heard so much, and I hope all of you, you beautiful listeners and tribe, got this too from your words, is that there is nothing wrong with you.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with
You
us.
don't, yes, you don't need to change who you are. And I was also thinking about this morning. You said something on that stage that I remember months later. And I feel that we can get lost of it in this very digital world that we're in, where someone will send a text versus picking up the phone and call, right? Where, we live in this digital world that you can forget that there's a human on the other end of the screen.
Yeah.
And you talked about these porch moments that you learned as a leader. Do you remember that?
I can't remember exactly what I said. Remind me.
The taking a beat,
Oh,
taking
is it
them
when I
out
was
on the
talking about
porch.
going to the balcony?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes,
I was
yes,
gonna
yes.
say porch, 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 but go to the balcony. Oh
Go to
my
the
goodness.
balcony.
I do that all the time. I say it all the time. And I really believe it. And let me go back to two things and then I'll talk
Yeah.
about balcony. So I also want to have the caveat about like this is who I am, with the fact that I fully believe that there's always opportunity for growth and learning, right?
Mm.
And I don't think those are mutually exclusive. And I think some people do sometimes. And I'm like, no, you can be your authentic self and always be looking to build skills and grow and reflect and, you know, be your best self. Like that's a journey forever, right? But sometimes I think people think that like this just who I am means that we don't have opportunities for growth and learning, right? And so sometimes when I have conversations with, whether it's individuals or young women that I mentor, I'm always challenging them. You can do both. So
Mm.
I just want to have that caveat. And then balcony. So I am a big believer that everything that we are able to accomplish uh, is really fundamentally based on relationships. That there's, especially in my role, there's virtually nothing that I do alone. Like I bring people together. When I cast a vote on my commission, I need a majority vote. When I'm working on big community issues, I'm convening people and bringing people together. And a lot of times we don't agree, but we need to have a good relationship and work together to find a path forward. And what I have found is that there have been times when you get really frustrated,
Mm.
uh, and it's in those moments that you can say something that you can't take back.
Mm.
And I think words are really powerful. I used to work in child welfare, and I saw the impact of verbal abuse on kids. It's really hard to forget words that are said to you. And so, you know, my philosophy has always been I need to figure out how to have difficult conversations in a way that doesn't damage relationships in the
Mm.
long run. And so part of that is being able to recognize when you're getting frustrated and when your emotions are starting to take over, and then removing yourself and giving yourself time to, I always say, let your thinking brain kick back on.
Mm.
And so for me, the visual that I've always used, not always, I think I read it in a book like a decade ago, or I should go back and figure out where I read this or heard this from. Um, but there's a visual of going to the balcony, getting some fresh air, taking a break, and really thinking through something before going back and having a
Mm.
difficult conversation. And so I say that all the time, like, I have to go to the balcony, or I've been in meetings where I've been really frustrated. I find out something in the midst of a meeting, and I will say, this is frustrating to me, and I don't feel like I'm in a good spot right now to have a deeper conversation about it until I think about it and process it a little bit more. I don't tend to be process oriented. I tend to be pretty decisive, but I know myself well enough to know, and I can, like, usually I can feel my emotions
Mm.
in my body, and I know enough at this point in my career to say, okay, I need to go to the balcony. I need to take a break. We need to revisit this in 2 hours, or we need to revisit it tomorrow. And I need some time to think about it. And I find that always gives me enough. There are so few things that are urgent enough that you have to have the hard conversation right then if you're really emotional about it.
Mm.
And so taking a break, it's good for you, it's good for the other person, and it's really good for your relationship, because then you give the other person opportunity to have some time and think about it as well. And typically they're able to come back to the conversation in a better headspace as well. And I think that's true professionally, but I also do it in my own personal life. Maybe it's because I grew up with 6 brothers and they would piss me off all the time. And I'd be like, oh man, I need a break from you. I don't know. I don't know.
What I love so much about that. Thank you for that. That hit me again in the same way that it did several months ago when we were in a room together. This permission to tell the truth. Take a beat. When you feel yourself, you don't need to sit there and buckle through it. You don't need to accept every calendar invite that comes into your calendar. And then there's resentment that builds because you're so back to back and you're tired and you're frustrated and you're not showing up your best self. I love that. I got to go to the balcony, take a beat, tell the truth, say I need a moment to regain my thoughts. I need a moment to give you the bandwidth that you deserve. I love that. I want to
You know,
ask you, my friend.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, take it.
Well, the only thing I would say too, and this has helped me, Especially I've had to have a lot of difficult conversations in my professional career, especially and in our personal lives, right? Like I was married, I'm divorced. I, that
Yep.
lots of difficult conversations there too
Yep.
with my ex-husband. So, but it does give you time to also like I journal a lot. So depending on whatever works for you, right? Like what works for me might not work for you, but for me, it gives me a chance to like write things down. And then I can see on paper, like, okay, this is really more about me than the situation or the other person. And I probably shouldn't talk about that, right? Like this aspect of the conversation will not be helpful. And it's more about me than them, right? You gotta own that too. Like how much of it is my own issue and how much of it is the real issue, right? So sometimes we gotta take a little bit of time figuring that out. And usually once your emotions kind of get back in check and you have more of a head heart balance, you can really think through that.
Mm. I Oh my God, another church service moment. We're gonna have bumper stickers at the wazoo after our time together, girl. Because yes, 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 yes. As you were just talking, it made me flash. I heard this once and I absolutely loved it. That the majority of our obstacles or the obstacles that we perceive can be solved by one of three things: a 24 hours, a good night's sleep,
Right.
by either a walk, the balcony moment,
Yeah.
or by calling a friend.
Yeah.
And after hearing that and hearing you, Roz, it makes me think about the fact that it's not about the speed of response, it's the quality of communication, and you can take a beat.
Yep.
That's powerful stuff. I want to ask you, looking back on your journey, when you were talking about your time in child welfare services, which I know is still very near and dear to your heart, in your journey, was your family surprised? Were you surprised that you decided to run for mayor, or was it something that you always saw? Or talk us through this journey of you getting to this seat where you are today and have been.
Yeah. It's a great question. And the answer is absolutely not. I never thought I would run for office. It wasn't like, in 10th grade when asked what you want to do, it wasn't on my list. I actually wanted to be a meteorologist. Clearly, I'm not that. So no, and quite frankly, my parents are extremely apolitical. In fact, if
Mm,
anything, I grew up in a household. Um, so I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in a very small kind of small rural poor community. I'm from a big family, so there were 10 of us kids in about 11 years. And my mom worked at a grocery store. My dad was a brickmason. My dad and his brother had been drafted and both were sent to Vietnam to serve. And my dad came back very angry. My uncle Clarence ended up dying. And so my dad, even when I was growing up, was anti-government.
mm,
I never saw my parents vote. I
mhm,
mean, it like farthest thing from my parents' priority list was politics or government. So I went to college. After I graduated high school, I went down to the University of South Alabama, got a degree in psychology and criminal justice. In that time, I met my now ex-husband, who was from Grand Rapids, and I moved here when I graduated. Started working first with adults who were chronically mentally ill, and then I started working in the field of domestic violence. Gravitated almost immediately to children who had witnessed domestic
mm,
violence. Went to graduate school at Michigan State, got my master's degree in social work, and just knew I wanted to work in child welfare. So I started working at, I can see it out my window here, DeVos Children's Hospital, in this small clinic called the Child Protection Team, and started working with children when they came in the hospital where there was a concern about abuse or neglect. And I would do the forensic interview or assessment with a forensic pediatrician. And then we would make a determination whether that case should be referred to Child Protective Services or law enforcement. Um, and I love that work. And I found when I was at the Children's Hospital that there were all these systems in place that were not all that supportive of families
mm,
or of individuals who are victims of violence. So I started to just find out like what's happening in our community that is looking at changing these systems to better support victims of violence. And so I got involved in like a domestic violence community coordinated response team. I started serving on the countywide child death review team. I started serving on a sexual assault prevention team because I'd worked with a lot of adolescent girls who were victims of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was through that community work and quite frankly, volunteer work that I met a group of women in our community. And their number one priority was to get more women elected to office.
Mm.
And it was literally on an evening where we were getting together, we're drinking wine and we're
Yeah.
complaining. Quite frankly, we used to call it wine and wine. So a friend of mine, Karen, would have women over to her house on a Wednesday and she'd have the whole box of wine, case
Yeah.
of wine, and we would just vent and literally whine about things, about how unfair the world is, basically. And a couple of those women said, you know, Rosalynn, there's a second ward city commissioner seat opening and we think you should run for it. And I was like, you're out of your mind. Like, what are you talking about? Like, by then I was divorced. I was working at the children's hospital, working at after hours on call job, living in a tiny little apartment in East Town. And I'm like, I don't think that's for me. And they're like, no, 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 we think you'd be great. And so again, it was this, and I find this so often if I look back at my life, like I had all of these moments where people saw in me
Mm-hmm.
like strengths and qualities that I never saw in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And this group of women, they were very persuasive. They're like, we'll help you raise money. We'll help you run your campaign. And I started coming to the city commission meetings and sitting and observing. And quite frankly, one thing I thought, even though I was at the time, I was like 28 going on 29, I'm like, oh my goodness, I could do that. So it did give me some confidence. I'm like, oh, I think I could do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and so I end up running, and I didn't win by much, just about 300 votes. But it really was because other people encouraged me to do it.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I didn't self-select at all, and I find that that's actually true for a lot of women in office, in
Yeah.
elected office, or quite frankly, even women who apply for a promotion. You know, I think and there's good data to back this up, right? Women will look at a job description and they'll be like, oh, well, I don't have that quality or this quality or this quality. And I'm like, yes, you do. And some of those qualities or skills, I should say, you might not have them today, but you can learn them. I mean, like you're
Yes.
smart. I mean, you can figure out anything if you put your mind to it. And so I find that even women who apply for promotions, very often somebody else is nudging them. That
Mm.
we don't recognize those strengths in ourselves enough to step up, that sometimes we need a little nudge. And I know that was true for me. I needed that. And when I ran for mayor, it was Mayor Hartwell who strongly encouraged me to run.
As you're talking, it just makes me think about the gifts of female friendships.
Yeah.
We have this
Mhm.
beautiful gift that we can see things in each other that we can't see in ourselves,
Mhm.
and making the space to keep those friendships in a very busy life.
Yeah.
I love that. Makes me flash back to my journey. You know, I'll never forget these moments. You never forget. I'll never forget sitting with a girlfriend of mine, and she had said to me, Meg, you're bigger than this job. You have
Mhm.
words to share. You're bigger than this. And I thought, me? Like, I'm a C student. I had a speech impediment. I was raised by a single mother, like, never had much, 600 on the SAT scores. I'm like, who am I? But it was that conversation, that catalyst that had me starting to look at things differently, and the lens at which you look for, to your point earlier, you find. Mayor Bliss, where can we find more of you? Where can we stay connected to you? Where can we get your nuggets of wisdom?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, obviously social media, I'm on social media, but
Hmm.
that's not really genuine connection, in my opinion, right?
Mm.
I think, I'm always open to connecting with women one-on-one and creating spaces for roundtables. And I do a lot of that. It's hard to do virtually sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'm always open to that. Obviously you can follow what's happening in Grand Rapids. I'm out and about a lot. Um, but I think the big thing is, how do we find those circles
Yes.
in our own community, right? Um, and I think that's and if those circles don't exist, we need to make them ourselves.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
like for me, when I became mayor, I am 100% with you. I'm always like, I need to create a circle of women that I trust, that
Yes.
I can be myself with, that I can vent, and I trust they're not going to go tell anybody. We all need that. And I also love to read, and I found that I was always reading books or articles related to my job, and I was getting away from just reading what I love.
Mm.
And so I started my own book club. I'm like, okay, who are like 6 women who I wish I could spend more time with? And I just create, we now call it story club because we don't always read books. And we get together, and, you know, it's just such a great space for us to be in
Yeah.
together. And, you know, we need to be super intentional about identifying who are those people in our lives that we want to spend more time with, that build us up, that fill our spirit after a hard day when our spirit feels broken, where we can be and say anything and you don't have to worry about them, you know, repeating it. You know, you can curse like a sailor and they're not going to, you know, judge you for it. I can't do that in public office, in public meetings, but when I'm with some girlfriends, I might do that after a glass of wine or vodka. Uh, so how do we create those spaces where you are able to be around the people who just unconditionally love you and support
Mm.
you?
Mm, that's
Yeah.
powerful. And I love when you said, don't wait. If you don't have it around you and you want it, create it.
Yeah.
Then, Mayor Bliss, you are a damn gift to this world. The ripple impact of you is so much more than you know. Keep putting you out into the world. Keep trusting yourself. Keep being guided by what feels right to you. Because as someone who has sat in a room and felt your presence, it is a gift. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Megan, honestly, I have so enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you. And if you create virtual circles that bring together women from all over the country or world, you let me know and I will be there. Because I do think we need a whole lot more of it. And we need women like you who also are willing to be a voice for
Mm,
all of us.
mm.
And so I appreciate you having the courage to step out and do the work that you're doing to support women. So thank you.